Virgo. Welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for April of 2022. We are the astrologers of Pandora Astrology. I'm Jamie Kell Miller. I'm in Berkeley, California.
I'm Julia Mijas in San Francisco.
Well, Virgo, this month's focus on relationships is a continuation of last month's themes. And if you want to know whether you should get closer to that person or kick them to the curb, a lifelong love reading will give you all the answers you need right now. And you'll find a link for that in the YouTube description below. Obviously, we'll be talking about relationships today. And I want to start with a moon that just happened very recently on March 31st, but we're still reverberating with it. It's this new moon in Aries happening in your 8th house of intimacy. We're calling this one Honest Words, Clear Intentions, because under this moon, there will be a lot of communication that goes straight to the heart of the matter. I think even more so perhaps for you with this landing in your 8th house. So be prepared to talk honestly about things that, may not really be on the surface, especially in your relationships and your intimate relationships. And to, let that area be kind of cleaned out and generate more intimacy in the future. The second moon I want to tell you about, because I've got 3 moons to tell you about actually. The second moon is a full moon in Libra, and it's happening right here in your 2nd house, opposite that sun in your 8th house. This one we're calling Intimacy and Restraint. It has some pretty intense themes because of the square to Pluto, but there's beautiful help from Saturn and Juno. So this is a really great moon for having deep, intense conversations and interactions with a partner, and then smoothing it all over and finding your way back to what is fair. And then the final moon I want to tell you about is happening late in the month on the 30th. And this one is a new moon in Taurus right here in your 8th house. New moons, of course, have to do with the birth, the beginnings, the inception of new things. This one even more so because it's a solar eclipse. So it's got those themes of rebirth, but also it has themes of beginning things that will lead further into the future because of the proximity of the North Node here in Taurus. This lands in your 9th house, and we're calling this eclipse Change Through Peaceful Stubbornness. That's because Uranus is here. It's happening in Taurus, and this all falls in your 9th house of the big picture. So it wouldn't be surprising if under this eclipse, you found yourself preoccupied with, what do I believe? How do I see the world? What is my worldview? How do I frame the world in that big picture way? And also, what changes might I make based on my worldview, my beliefs, my faith? You can find out a lot more about all of these moons on our YouTube channel, pandoraastrology.com. You'll find the March moon is in the March 2022 news playlist there. And then you'll find the April moons, including the eclipse, are in the April news playlist and also on our forecast page on our website. But the last thing that I want to leave you with about this moon in particular is that solar eclipses show us our shadow through how we behave, how we act. So during this moon, pay close attention to the behaviors that you show, that you perform, that are driven by beliefs that you have that maybe you don't want to question. Okay, then the last thing I want to say before turning this over to Julia is that Ceres has been moving through Gemini and your 10th house, driving you to cultivate and build wealth in your career for some months now. And it will be getting ready to move on into the 11th house of community next month. And I'll talk about that more when we get there. Hey, Julia, what's up for the Virgos of the world regarding Mercury, Venus, and Mars?
Well, lots of activity going on this month, Virgo. I'll start with Mercury, who is moving super, super fast in the zodiac right now. So fast that he's going through 3 different houses of yours this month. He's starting off in your 8th house, where he spent a lot of that cycle last month as well in March. And when Mercury is in the 8th house is the house of other people's money. It's also a house of investigation and research. So this transit tends to make one's mind very probing. Now, for the first few days, Mercury's then going to switch into the 9th house. But what's very important to know about this 8th house transit at the very beginning of the month is that you're having greater epiphany day happening here. And that's when Mercury is exactly conjoined the sun. And greater epiphany days, they happen a few times a year, and they really bookend the Mercury retrograde cycle. So that now that Mercury is moving so fast, it's kind of like the opposite of Mercury retrograde, when things slow down and we run into some problems and snafus. Now that Mercury is moving fast, everything Mercury related, which rules education, communication, learning, writing, travel, all these things should be moving along a little bit better now. So on April 2nd, you're having that greater epiphany day in your 8th house. And greater epiphany days are times of insights and aha moments. So having this happen in your 8th house early in the month is that you could be gaining some clarification, gaining some insights about 8th house matters. So the 8th house is the house of other people's money, the finances you share with family or institutions. So you could be getting some clarity about financial things in your life. You could also be getting a little bit of clarity about some research project or something you've been investigating lately too, because that's also ruled by the 8th. Now on April 10th, Mercury moves into your 9th house. It's going to spend most of the month in your 9th house, so about 19 days. And when Mercury's in the 9th, well, Mercury and the 9th have some common ground together. The 9th is a house of expansion and exploration, and Mercury is a pretty curious planet. The 9th house is about learning things that kind of help you grow, maybe on your job, or grow personally, or even grow philosophically. And Mercury loves to learn. So during this time, it's a wonderful transit. You might find yourself more curious. Maybe your mind is also on more faraway places because the 9th house rules travel. Maybe you go on a trip. Mercury is a travel planet and the 9th rules travel. Or maybe you're planning your next trip and able to sort of think beyond your limitations and towards something that might help expand you and grow as a person. Then on the 29th, Mercury enters your 10th house of career, where your mind will be much more preoccupied with your job. And Jamie and I are really going to cover that cycle in a lot more depth in our next month's video, where mainly that transit is taking place. So please stay tuned to hear more about what that's going to be like. So we've got 2 more planets to talk about. We have Venus, who is the planet of art, beauty, pleasure, relationships. Wherever we have her, we have a little bit of extra luck. And at the very beginning of the month, the first 5 days, she's in your 6th house of work, which is a wonderful time for getting along well with the people you work with, having a little bit more pleasure and fun at the job. But on April 5th, Venus is moving into one of her favorite houses, which is your 7th house of partnership. So with Venus in the 7th, this is a wonderful, wonderful time for you, Virgo. If you're in a relationship, this is a transit where you can enjoy more harmony with your partner, and Venus in your 7th house means that perhaps your partner is looking more attractive to you. You just notice how cute they are during this transit as well. And Venus in the 7th is really nice, if you guys have been having some rough patches, to really smooth things over and enjoy being around each other. And
Julie, do you think that this is a good time for Virgos to date if they're single?
Oh my God, such a good time for single Virgos to date too. So, if you're just listening to this and saying, oh, I don't have a relationship, well, this is a really good time to kind of open yourself up to more dating. Maybe go on an app or 2 and sort of see what's out there, because there might be more to catch out there than usual, which is kind of nice. Yeah, and the 7th house also rules contracts. contractors too. So you could get a little luck if you need to hire a contractor, especially if it was somebody who could give you aesthetic advice, like an interior designer, or maybe if you were having some consultation to do your hair or something, this could be a good transit for it. And then finally, we're going to talk about Mars. Mars is the planet of activity and drive. Wherever we have it, we really, really expend a lot of our energy that month. But it can also be an area of our life where we might be a little more conflict prone or even competitive with others, or others might be a little competitive with us. So Mars starts the month in your sixth house. And the sixth house, it represents your work conditions. It represents, such as the people that you work with or your office space. The sixth house is also a health house too. And when Mars is in the sixth house, it can be a time of not seeing eye to eye with the people that you work with. Maybe your clients or your customers, maybe you're not quite, on agreeing on everything. It can sometimes bring some sort of frustrations to that sphere of life. And since Mars is a competitive planet, maybe people are being kind of competitive with you at work, maybe trying to gain the favor of your boss, and you got to kind of sort of get it up in there and stand up for yourself. And since the sixth house is a health house, this can be a time where some chronic stuff might act up. Not predicting anything bad is going to happen to you, but if you are somebody who gets migraines or maybe difficult periods or that kind of stuff, maybe a little anemia, sometimes these things can kind of crop up. However, having Mars in the sixth gives you the energy and the drive to set a good routine, a good health routine for yourself, so that you could really deal with these issues in a more effective way too. Then by the 14th, Mars enters your seventh house, joining Venus in there. And Mars in the seventh can usually be a time of conflict with partner. However, having Venus in there, I think really, really nullifies and kind of smooths out Mars's rough edges. So I think Mars in the seventh house for the rest of the month is going to be a high energy time with your partner. This might be a time where you guys are just involved in a project together, or maybe you're doing a workout together, like going to the gym or going for a jog together. But wherever we have Mars is where we can kind of feel energized. And being with your partner is helping you get in touch with all of that energy this month. So there could be a lot of work and a lot of just expending of activity with your partner in there too.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk about Juno, which has been traveling through Aquarius since February. And in February, I talked about that. And so you should probably check your February Virgo horoscope to learn about what Juno has meant in traveling along through your sixth house of work. Juno is a social maven, is about partnership. She's a matchmaker. She's a matriarch. I like to say she weaves the fabric of society together. And she is moving on into your seventh house, which is a pretty great position for Juno. She moves in there on April 20th. She'll be here for much of the rest of the year. And that's because once she enters Pisces, later on in the year, she's going to go retrograde and back up in this house and bring us into a relationship retrospection period, which should land pretty solidly with you because she's doing this in your seventh house of partnership. So almost like a double whammy for you of relationship retrospection. And that's still ahead of us. It's a little bit over the horizon. But what I do want to say is that while Juno is in your seventh house, whether retrograde or direct, you're going to really want to manage your relationships in a better way. You're going to want to meet the right people and strengthen your social ties with the right people, and also potentially manage in a better way the relationships between the people that are around you, people that you know, like introducing this person to that person so that they know each other, and that can strengthen your own web, if you will. So I think there will be a lot of preoccupation with that pretty much for the rest of the year because of Juno traveling along your seventh house. The next thing that I want to point to is on April 19th, the sun changes signs, which is to say the season of Aries, and there you see the sun is in Aries, will be drawing to a close, and we're moving into the season of Taurus, which lands in your ninth house. And the sun is all about that life force, that life-giving energy of sunlight, which I take to be symbolic of attention. Wherever you spend your valuable attention, you are pouring life force energy into something so that it can thrive. So when the sun, signifying that attention and energy, comes into your ninth house, your attention moves to the realm of growth and expansion. And if you happen to be engaged in higher education right now, you're in a learning program, this is a really great transit for that. If you are a person of faith and you want to expand your religious or spiritual practices, this is a really good time for that also. And the last thing I want to tell you about is that Pluto is going retrograde towards the end of the month. Pluto is a pretty intense and heavy planetary archetype. And right here he is traveling along through the end of your fifth house in Capricorn. And you'll see the little red RX symbol appear. Right there it is, showing Pluto going retrograde. And Pluto brings transformation and metamorphosis, a death and rebirth experience wherever he goes. He's been passing along your fifth house for more than a decade and will probably spend about 14 or 15 years here in toto. And this is a house of your sense of yourself, your creativity, your self-expression. This is a house of performance. It is a house also of fun and leisure activities. So Pluto's been transforming this area over the period of many years. And if this year Pluto happens to be transiting something more specific, not just an area, but an actual planet or point in your chart, for example, the moon or the sun or Venus, then you will really feel this quite strongly right around the day that Pluto turns retrograde. It will catapult you into an inward journey to discover what is the transformation that you must go through this year. If you want to discover whether you are having that kind of a Pluto transit, you can find a link in the YouTube description below for a page that will help you to figure it out and suggest ways that you can handle it. Well, that's what we have for you today, Virgo. You can always find your horoscope for your sun sign and your rising sign on our website, pandoraastrology.com, in the horoscope tab. And you can also use our website to get readings with us or join a class. Until next time, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye-bye.